Healthcare negotiations are back on. I, of course, mean within the Republican Party. They're going to try to finish the job of gutting Obamacare. And Representative Mark Sanford went on CNN and gave us some insight into what the GOP is working on.
Obamacare includes a number of different protections for people with pre-existing conditions, but sources tell CNN that one of the things that Republican lawmakers are looking to do to try to break this logjam among Republicans is allowing states to obtain waivers to opt out of those rules. Can you confirm if that's part of the discussion right now?
I think that's accurate, and I think it makes good sense. I mean, the difficulty with what we had started with was you wouldn't let insurance be an insurance within the individual healthcare marketplace. And so you have folks who have real needs, profound healthcare needs. They've drawn a bad genetic lottery card or they've been in a car wreck. The Affordable Care Act has helped them, in fairness to the Affordable Care Act. But for a lot of other folks out there, they've seen their premiums skyrocket. They've seen less in the way of choice. And what a number of us have said is let that part be real insurance. And so I think that this splitting and allowing states to, if Vermont wants to do, in essence, a single-payer system and South Carolina wants to have a more market-based system, I think it's something that makes sense and has a degree of pickup based on the conversations I've had with other members.
Okay, so if you don't understand what he said there, you got to go back to the beginning to get his main point. He was asked very simply, hey, there's this essential benefits portion of Obamacare, which probably the most important provision within the essential benefits portion is protections for people with pre-existing conditions. In other words, what the health insurance companies used to be able to do is reject anybody simply on the basis that, hey, you had gotten sick at one point or you had an issue at one point, therefore you're too much of a financial risk for me to cover you now, so you're a bad investment, so I want no part of it, and I'm not going to offer you health insurance. Now, Obamacare came along and said, no, you're not allowed to do that, because then that defeats the whole purpose of having a health care system and a health insurance system. I mean, think about it. So the people who need care the most don't end up getting it under that system if they happen to lose insurance for a brief amount of time for whatever reason, because they switch jobs or whatever. So Obamacare, though it's very flawed and it's got so many loopholes and it's originally a right-wing plan, one of the better provisions within Obamacare is protection for people with pre-existing conditions. Now, Trump decided originally, we're going to keep the essential health benefits portion of Obamacare, so we're going to keep the protections for pre-existing conditions and some other things, because it is simply too politically toxic to get rid of it. I mean, if you get rid of it, do you have any idea, even if you... This is a bitch-ass, weak Democratic Party, but you hand them that kind of a victory where you're taking away protection from people with pre-existing conditions, they'll bludgeon you over the head from now until Election Day, even though they're terrible at doing that. Because what you've done is so egregious and such a strong percentage of the American people are against it that you're basically trying to lose the next election if you do that. So the Trump bill was bad. The Trump and Ryan bill was bad. It guts Medicaid $880 billion. It's a $600 billion tax cut for the rich. It takes the uninsured rate from 10% to 19%, leaves 53 million people uninsured. So it was a joke, don't get me wrong. But even they said, oh, that's a bridge too far. We can't just get rid of protection for pre-existing conditions. So what does Mark Sanford and the Freedom Caucus, hilariously named Freedom Caucus, the Tea Partiers, what do they say? Wrong. That's what we're going to do. That was their main objection. Their main objection was not that Trump care sucked. It's that it didn't suck enough. As draconian as it was, they said, we want it to be more draconian. So now you have, apparently, the establishment Republicans and the Tea Partiers are now sitting down at the table, and they're trying to iron out a final bill that they can move forward on. And the crux of the negotiations are, we should get rid of protection for pre-existing conditions, right? That's what they're discussing at the table now. I mean, this party, man, they're such a joke and they're so barbaric. And it's not like they craft these bills without the consequences even in mind. That's why when the CBO report came out, everybody who gives a shit about having a good system was like, are you kidding me? But the Republicans were like, no, it's still a good bill. How the fuck do you defend the bill after we learned all the devastating effects it has? Because they don't care about the outcomes. They're just putting together an amalgamation of right-wing talking points. In their mind, Obamacare bad, market good. So they come up with all these disparate ideas, slap them together. Hey, you can buy insurance across state lines and that'll fix like everything. It won't fix anything. It just makes it so that insurance companies can go to the state where they're taxed the least. So it's a ruse to make them pad their bottom line more and make more profit. That's all that is. But these guys are real Kool-Aid drinkers and they actually believe Rush Limbaugh's bullshit. You have a party of people who follow Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and Mark Levin like they're gods. I mean, it's really pathetic. But they're admitting it, man. They're out there saying, yeah, that's the negotiation. Should we take away pre-existing conditions? And then he gives you the bullshit about, I'm just in favor of choice, and maybe people in Vermont, if they want single payer, they could do it, but if we want a more market-based system. But we know, as a matter of fact, that a market-based system screws more people. They act like, number one, that isn't the most of the system we have right now. It is. There were tweaks within the market-based system under Obamacare, but we still have a market-based system, and the results are disastrous. And furthermore, if you want to make it a more pure market-based system, hey, you idiots, go back to right before Obamacare. That was the system that sucked so bad that we needed reform immediately. But they go, I know the solution. The solution is to go back to the even shittier system we had pre-Obamacare. Well, this is why 45,000 people die every year, because they don't have access to basic health care. This is why millions and millions of people are uninsured. This is why medical bankruptcies are one of the top causes of bankruptcy in the country. So they're they're so stupid. So if I'm the Democrats, I take this clip, I play it 1,000,000 times. You can just play the beginning portion there when he's answering the question and say, this is what they're doing. They just want to get rid of protection for people with pre-existing conditions. That's what they're debating. You can bludgeon them over the head with that and win the next election in a landslide, because that is mental. I mean, that's fucking crazy, man. That's what they're going to do? That's absolutely ludicrous. So this is where we're at. This is the state of the discourse today. It's still alive that they're trying to repeal it, and now they're working on getting rid of pre-existing conditions, and they're probably working on a way to pitch this to the American people that makes them think they're not getting fucked over. But once the American people start feeling the effects, oh boy. I mean, we already have a shitty healthcare system. This would make it even worse. And remember, guys, so even though Obamacare is not Medicare for all, it's not even a public option, so it's weak reform. When there was a poll asking people, provision by provision, hey, what do you think of Obamacare? If you ask people, do you support Obamacare? Oftentimes they'll go, no, I don't. So it was like a little bit unpopular. It was like a slight majority disliked Obamacare. But that's just because of right-wing propaganda. When you went provision by provision within Obamacare, it was wildly popular. So people go, yeah, I like the Medicaid expansion. People said, yeah, I like closing the Medicare donut hole. Yeah, I like the fact that kids can stay on their parents' health insurance rolls until they're 26, when it used to be a lot lower. So all you need, this stuff just requires an argument in favor of it and an argument against what the Republicans are doing and a more viable solution. So if the Democrats argued for Medicare for all, H.R. 676, John Conyers' bill, if you argue for that while at the same time saying they want to get rid of protection for pre-existing conditions, you can't lose in the next election, because that idea really is just bonkers. I mean, we've covered stories from before we had the protection for pre-existing conditions. There was a woman who had cancer and she was looking for her insurance to cover it, of course, and they go, we're not covering it. She's like, what? Why? They go, well, you had cancerous skin lesions back in the day. And you didn't tell us that, so now we're not covering you because that was a pre-existing condition and you didn't tell us. She's like, cancerous skin lesions? What are you talking about? You know what they're referring to? She didn't have cancerous skin lesions. She had acne. She didn't disclose the fact that when she was younger, she had acne to the insurance company, and they used that to weasel out of paying for her cancer treatment. These are the kinds of unscrupulous companies we're dealing with, and the Republicans have the nerve to turn around and say the government is a death panel. No, you support the death panels. The death panels are the private insurance companies who want to weasel out of paying for people when they need care the most. So you support it. If you want to kick people off for pre-existing conditions, you support the death panels. That's a death panel. What you're saying is either go bankrupt paying for your care or die. That's what you're telling people to do when you say no more protection for pre-existing conditions. So this party is just, they're not even a party anymore, as Noam Chomsky says. They're just not. They're just a weird gathering of like Christian fundamentalists and total representatives of corporate America. That's it. That's all it is. It's just all we do is represent the corporations or try to implement backwards primitive social ideas. That's all they do. That's all they represent. That's all they stand for. And they're now bold enough to just go on CNN and be like, yeah, that's what we're discussing. We want to roll back pre-existing conditions.